Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am super honored to have Thea Dodds on the call today. This is a conversation that I've been wanting to have for a long time, and Thea is a customer of Sticky Albums and got in contact with some people on our marketing team, and this is just a great opportunity to have this conversation. She is the co-author of this fantastic new book, The New Art of Capturing Love. It's the essential guide to lesbian and gay wedding photography. So Thea, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nate. I'm glad to be here.
You bet. I want to quick tee up the show with what to expect. I think this is going to be a great episode. This is a marketing and business podcast first. And so while I'm not going to get into the huge political debate about this, I have to be authentic and in integrity about my view and support of gay marriage. I don't think it would be fair or honest to my listeners to try to dance around my own views. So I'm going to share them. And I think I respect everybody's view, but I definitely believe that this is not, it shouldn't be a legal issue. It should be legal for everybody to get married, period. And so I don't want to dance around that because I think that would be phony of me. So thank you so much for coming on the show. The real meat of it is going to be getting a preview of your book and some of the lessons you've learned along this journey, the business benefits and also the artistic benefits of adding this line of work to your photography.
Yeah, there's a number of a number of benefits.
Yep.
Not just to your business, but just to your artistic growth, right? We're all looking to grow, not just our business, but we're all looking to grow as artists. And I have grown tremendously over the last few years of writing this book and really looking into how can I not only better serve my same-sex couples, but how can I better serve all couples.
Right, exactly. So let's go back to the beginning, so to speak, of your journey in deciding to write this book. I think first, even before then, your journey to deciding to photograph same-sex weddings and how you made that decision. I think I'll start first with the part that I was having awareness about, even in preparation for the call. What bums me out is that I had to stop and think, how is this conversation on the podcast going to potentially negatively affect Sticky Albums' business? And that's a bummer, because I think this is a civil rights issue of this time, equal to the racial issues our country faced years back and still continues to face. I think it's in the same ballpark, and it's just a bummer that I think what I realize is all of us as photographers also have to struggle with this same decision. Is what's going to happen in my neck of the woods if I decide to do same-sex weddings? If on either side, there's the risk for those of you on the call that don't want to, but are realizing that you could be sued, and it's illegal to deny working with a client just based on that alone.
Yes.
And so it's definitely a tricky time, and I think you made a really good point earlier before the call, is that what we definitely just need to do is have the conversation. As awkward as it might be, as hard as it is to talk about, we just need to talk about it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things over the last, couple of years since the book has come out. And one thing in particular that I hear people say is that they don't want to say the wrong thing.
Right.
People are afraid, like, oh, what if I say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing? And really the only wrong thing you can ever say is just not being honest with yourself about, what is your internal confliction, or, if there is one.
Yep.
The only wrong thing is not saying anything.
Right.
We have to have this dialogue. This is the time. It's probably maybe even a little past the time. Because same-sex marriage has been legal in Massachusetts for 10 years.
Yeah.
And now we are coming up on a major moment in U.S. history, which will be in June, when the Supreme Court is going to is going to speak on whether or not same-sex marriage will be legally recognized across the nation. That's huge for us. That suddenly takes the idea of whether or not photographers have a choice to serve, depending on where you live, to us, like you said, to legally being responsible to serve all couples. We cannot discriminate based on sexual orientation. Right. So So,
it's interesting times. Absolutely.
It's interesting times.
So I think another practical takeaway that I'd like you to speak on is it's a loaded issue, so I think it's good to talk about, number one. But just as if rewind the clock, just the same is true for shooting straight weddings. Is you want to make sure that you are a good match for all of your clients, right?
Absolutely.
Separate from sexual orientation,
Yep.
you want to make sure you're a good match, and so you have marketing that's in alignment with your style, with your personality, so you're setting the right expectations. And if for whatever reason there's a personality clash, you would want to turn away a couple that's same sex or not based on other issues too. So how would you recommend handling that, considering it becoming such a loaded issue?
Right. And I mean, we have to treat all clients the same. That's it. So, my goal right now is I want to be an inclusive wedding photographer. So like you said, trying to align my marketing materials to make that apparent. I have same-sex couples integrated in all of my marketing, in my website and all my marketing materials.
Yep.
So I put it right out there that I'm inclusive. I photograph straight people and gay people and trans people, photograph everybody.
Yeah.
So if I get a client that's not the right match for me for whatever reason, what I'm going to do is refer them to another photographer that I think would be a better match.
Cool.
I think that that's what other photographers, should do as well. But I think there's a fine line. You have to be very careful. If inside you're really turning somebody away because of their sexual orientation, that's tricky. That's tricky. So I think everybody needs to confront that and and come up with a plan with how they're going to deal with that.
Right. Absolutely.
To go back to your question too about what how I made that decision. For me, there was just never a decision to make.
Good for you.
It was just always, I do live in New England, which is a progressive area, so it's just always of course I'll photograph a same-sex couple. Of course I will.
Right.
And I did photograph my first same-sex wedding in 2005 in Massachusetts. And that wedding was a real eye-opener for me because it was very different from any straight wedding I'd ever photographed. And so this was the beginning to this book for me. It started in 2005.
Explain to me how it was different.
Well, there was no groom. That's different.
Yep.
There was no wedding dress. There was no wedding gown. There was no bouquet, but there was a boutonniere. And then the real biggie was that this couple had never kissed in front of their families before. So
that gives me
goosebumps. So if you kind of think, if you think about how you usually work with couples and maybe you're making them kiss and just for photographs and that sort of stuff, and then if you're afraid that, I'm going to tell them to do something that they're not comfortable with, or is this the wrong thing, right? Because we all have that internal dialogue.
Yep. And
that inhibition at that point is then going to impact the end product of what you're delivering to your products, to your clients. So that was the big eye-opener. And then the other piece is when I was posing this couple, posing two women, it's just physically different than posing a man and a woman.
Right.
It's just different.
Yep.
And so I was running into I was struggling with that a little bit.
Yeah.
And, if you think about your mind's eye, I wasn't even totally sure what it was supposed to look like. I know what a beautiful portrait of a bride and groom looks like.
Yep.
I've been fed that image.
Yes, exactly.
But what does that beautiful bride and bride look like? And does it look just like a bride and groom? Maybe it does. But I feel like before writing this book, I couldn't answer that because I hadn't been exposed to enough images of same-sex couples.
Yeah. That's that's so fascinating. I think there's a couple things I want to pull apart here. Is one, the opportunity. I don't know if that's a good enough word, but it's. I think it's an amazing opportunity to capture a wedding day for anybody is one of the biggest days of their life, and I think that a same-sex marriage is even bigger. It's a really big deal, and what an amazing opportunity to be trusted with that service. Right.
I mean, can you imagine that we're going to be telling our grandchildren
Right.
that we were some of the first wedding photographers to ever photograph same-sex weddings.
Right.
I mean, this is a mark in history.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
I feel tremendously honored to be part of this.
Exactly.
And I've seen some wonderful things at same-sex weddings. Last year I photographed one, and when the officiant said, in the great state of Massachusetts, I now pronounce you married, I mean, a roaring applause came up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so exciting for people to be part of this. And in that wedding, both of the bride's fathers got up and high-fived. I mean, it was just like, I've never seen that before. And people have a transformative experience at just attending a same-sex wedding.
Yeah, it's a celebration in a whole new level.
It really is.
Yeah. And there's the dynamic that some of the weddings are going to be couples that have been together, married, so to speak, for several years, right? And so talk about
decades.
Oh, that adds a whole other level. I love that title, like Capturing Love. That's what it's about. That's what I think gets everybody into falls in love with the magic of capturing weddings.
Right.
Is that how unique it is? I was watching the video on your site. Like, it's such a unique day for everybody who's there as guests. We put on our best clothes. We say the most heartfelt, thoughtful things in our speeches. It's just a very powerful, exciting day. I really love the idea of just a book title, Capturing Love. I think it gets to the heart of it. You really have to, from what it sounds like, let go of your preconceived idea of what any of this is supposed to look like.
I think so.
And so do you suggest having the conversation with your clients and letting them look at sample work so you feel more prepared to capture what they're looking for, or do you just let whatever is going to happen be more organic?
I think you really have to have conversations with your clients beforehand about their comfort level with physical displays of affection.
Right.
That's a big one to talk about. I think you have to have conversations about, how do they want to be, what do they picture their photographs looking like?
Right.
You're going to have some really traditional same-sex couples, really like in that very traditional. Then you're going to have some others that are not.
Yeah.
And what does this suddenly start to sound like? It sounds like all people, right? And that's just it.
We should be asking these questions anyway.
Of our straight couples,
yes,
and that's
exactly.
been one of the big light bulbs that I've had in this process. Is that really what we're starting to talk about is modern couples, right? Yeah. And how do we best serve our modern couples? And how do we capture their love? Well, I think you do that by understanding who they are authentically and what is their relationship, and that's what I want to capture. And how do you get there? With strangers. You can't. You have to get to know them. You have to ask them some kind of personal questions. And you have to build a rapport where they feel trusting in you so that they can then be vulnerable. Yeah. And like what you were just saying about on a wedding day, we dress our best, we say our best things. We're our best people on a wedding day. We're our true people, our true selves.
Right.
And that's what's so fun about photographing that time, is because people are themselves.
Exactly. Let's see, where do I want to go next? Gives me a second to gather my thoughts anyway.
Sure.
Let's go into, I'm going to do a quick wrap on that, how important it is just to get to know people, get to know who you're shooting, and then...
I have a little point to add to that about getting to know your clients. One question a lot of people want to ask and are often afraid to ask is, they say, now should I just figure out who's the more masculine one and who's the more feminine one, and then pose them like I would a straight couple, given that information? Right. I would say the short answer is no. Yeah. And I think we all have to open up our minds and think, okay, maybe there isn't masculine and feminine. What if there is a spectrum of identity that we just need to appreciate? And on that, straight people fall on the spectrum as well. And so again, that's this whole idea of like, we got to get to know our people, and we got to leave our baggage and our preconceived ideas behind so that we can really get to know our clients and best serve them. Absolutely.
That's fantastic. Okay, so let's transition into some of the business parts of the benefits. I think that this is a huge market. There's a huge potential here, and so what do you recommend for photographers that want to go after this market?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the fastest growing emerging market in wedding photography. So that's important to know. It's estimated to be worth $1.5 billion.
Yep.
So
there's all this pent-up demand, right?
Well, there has been, and some of that is clearing out.
Yep.
So I co-wrote this book with Catherine Ham. She's the president at GayWeddings.com, and so a lot of she's just a wonderful resource on all that information. And according to Catherine, a lot of those couples who had been together for 20, 30 years,
Yep.
They probably got married in the last 10 years where you could travel to different states
Right.
and do that. So a lot of that pent-up demand has kind of diminished, although we certainly are still seeing it, even here in New England.
Yep.
We're still seeing some of the older couples get married.
Cool.
So there's that. But I think one of the bigger things is now you have younger same-sex couples that are coming up, and they're starting to follow that more traditional trajectory of dating, getting engaged, telling your families, planning a wedding. So we're starting to see that happen.
Cool.
And so that there's a marketing opportunity there, especially for marketing toward gay men. I will say this is the largest group of people who is unrepresented in the wedding industry.
Yep.
Men are in general underrepresented in weddings.
Yep.
We've been told, and we have all acted as if our only client is the bride.
We always talk about it that way. I do myself.
We do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and I would encourage everyone to just right off the bat start to reinvent yourself, and don't say the bride, say the couple. Because now we're talking about couples. And currently, you do see it's something like 60-40. So 60% of same-sex weddings are two brides, and 40% are two grooms. All of this is fluctuating so quickly.
Right.
So that could be very quickly incorrect.
Yep,
but
yep,
last
yep.
I knew, that was what I heard.
Got it.
So there's it's a slightly larger market for lesbian women. That said, think of how unmarketed that group of two grooms is. I think that's going to be fascinating to watch once we get smart enough to actually offering this group of people our services, to creating magazines, and showing two grooms on our websites.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be remarkable to see what happens, what's in the future.
I agree.
there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So
going back to
language is key.
Yep,
so I'd
got
say
it.
that's where we all have to start.
Okay.
We have to reinvent our language. We got to ditch the bride.
Yeah.
Say the couple, and there's a number of other things: bridesmaids, groomsmen. We can say attendants, mean the same thing.
Great.
Bridal party, let's say wedding party. And everybody's going to have to go through and inventory your material.
Yeah.
And make it gender neutral.
That's something I would have never thought. But there's all that subtle detail that's tied up in our language.
Yeah, and I've talked to many gay men who have just told me that they've gone to photographer after photographer and scratched out on the questionnaire or on the contract where it says bride.
Yep.
So everything, your contract, your questionnaires, couple, client. So that's the first step. Second step is we all need to diversify our portfolios.
Yep.
So if you want to photograph same-sex weddings, you got to show same-sex couples.
Yep.
So that maybe you haven't photographed your first same-sex wedding yet. So how do you show it if you haven't done it?
Yep.
Well, my suggestion there would be to get some models, to post something on Craigslist. You got to get your feet wet. You need to practice photographing same-sex weddings or same-sex couples before you get yourself a same-sex wedding.
That's a good suggestion. So even trying to second shoot first before you're running the show.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's really important that the only way we get better at anything is by practicing.
Yep.
And the thing we never want to do at a wedding is practice.
Good. That's a good quote. That's a really good quote. Yeah, absolutely. You want to be ready to go and prepared.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I think those are the big things, is once you need to get your language right, you need to get your portfolio all prepped, and then you can think about the different outlets to market, the different blogs out there, the different magazines out there. These are growing. This is brand new. Anybody who's going to come up with the marketing whiz for how to target same-sex couples. I mean, it's out there, and somebody just needs to kind of come up with it.
Right. I mean, it's just marketing. It's just different. You just find out where your audience is.
Exactly.
You get to understand your target market, and you find out who's talking about that, like who talks to them, where do they visit, what periodicals do they read,
right.
where do they, that's all it is. And I think by and large, for everyone, I like talking about how we just get bombarded every day with marketing interruptions, that word of mouth referrals are they've always been important, but they've only become increasingly important, especially when somebody's trying to navigate something as delicate as this. I think word of mouth referral is tremendous, right? I think that there's been that undercurrent already in how any kind of marginalized group shops, where they've got to ask, hey, do you know, are they cool with, like, you could go somewhere to get your hair cut or shop for clothes or whatever it is, like, hey, are they cool with, like, there's this undercurrent of in the economy that is still going to be there. And so tapping into that word of mouth referral is a really powerful thing.
Yep. And I have some clients who call and even still ask me, will you photograph a same-sex wedding? Which I think it's terrible that, like you said, it's terrible that same-sex couples have to ask that. That's unfortunate.
It is.
But it's interesting that I will even get that question, which makes me think, gosh, I'm not doing a good enough job on my website. Like,
right.
somehow I'm not getting it out there enough.
I would assume they just didn't even look yet, because I think I think that I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of when people are shopping for anything, there's just the stock questions they ask everybody. Do you offer prints on CD?
Yeah.
And they're just going to continue to ask the same questions of everybody.
Right. So, and another benefit here to showing same-sex weddings on your website is not just marketing to same-sex couples, but you're also going to start marketing to friends and allies and relatives of same-sex couples. And so that was actually an unexpected benefit for me, is all of a sudden I realized I started photographing a lot of straight weddings where there would be same-sex people in their family or in the wedding party or something like that. And that opened my eyes, like, wow, not only am I getting same-sex couples, but I'm also getting friends and allies who want to support a photographer who is being inclusive.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's a good way to look at it for people that are nervous about it. You can replace any of the business you might lose with people who aren't supportive, with people who are. That's fantastic. Yeah. Cool.
And the truth is, if I'm losing business, I just don't know it. You know, so, and I mean, that's a good thing. If if my business tanked, I would be like, okay, I guess I'm losing business. But I've been doing this since 2005. I've survived the Great Recession. All is well. So as far as I can tell, in New England, it was not business suicide to be inclusive.
That's fantastic. Awesome. Well, this has been really, really fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show, for writing a great book and giving us what you said is the only guide so far. Hopefully there'll be more resources out there that people can go to in practicing this new part of our business, so that we're better prepared going forward. And is there any additional tips you want to add, or parts you're proud of in the book?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I think a really important thing about this book is that there's over 48 photographers that are included in this book.
Great.
So it's not just my work. It is a number of people, because we really had to collect a diverse. We're talking about a diverse group of people. So we wanted to collect a diverse group of images. So over 48 photographers, over 78 couples. This is the largest published collection of same-sex wedding photograghs. Great. So again, that's another pedestal that will be happily knocked off when somebody replaces it. But for now, that's what it is. So in addition to being the only guide to photographing same-sex weddings, it is also, it's a piece of history. So I'm exceptionally proud to just be a photographer in this time.
Yeah, good for you. That is fantastic. And like we talked about earlier, it just helps looking at such a range is a really good place to start for
Yeah.
inspiration of what's they're really the model's broken and there's no more perfect. There's no more like this is how all weddings should be shot.
Yeah.
It's looking at all of the different ways they can be shot and then really going back to the customer and just having that authentic conversation about what's their vision for the perfect wedding images.
Yep. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Cool. Well, thank you, Nate.
You're very welcome. Yeah, thank you so much. So our podcasts are sponsored by Sticky Albums. This book makes all of this possible. So I like wrapping up with just asking you how it's helping your business. How are you using Sticky Albums, and what are your clients saying about them?
Yeah, well, I would say like any wedding photographer, a real important thing for me is to do something different. I really try and be unique to my competition.
Yep.
And I'm one of the only photographers in my area that's offering sticky albums, and it's been really well received because my clientele, they come from out of state. This is a destination wedding spot. So they're in general they're professionals. They're very tech savvy. I absolutely can look at the number of opens and the shares that I'm getting on my sticky albums, and they're really fantastic. So people like it, and it's a bonus for them.
Cool.
And I don't tell them that I do it.
Nice.
Nice. So it's a great way that I share my, that's how I put out my preview, is I put it on my blog and Facebook, and then I also send them out a sticky album. And
fantastic.
So people love it. It's just fun. And I think it's really important that my clients remember having fun with me. That's the memory I want them to walk away with.
Very cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in this long. I really appreciate. Let's continue the conversation. I love ending our podcasts with just asking for feedback. Sending me an email, nate@stickyalbums.com. Let me know what you took away from this show, what we can do better. Also, check out Thea's work at her links below, as well as a link to buy the book. Thanks again.